disruptive.
Weird thing to happen.
So with the Trump administration takeover of Washington, D.C., in this effort to combat crime, I would have never thought that food would be considered a weapon. But in America, anything's possible. So the New York Post, a D.C. man charged with felony assault after hitting a federal agent with a Subway sandwich. It's good I can laugh at certain things. It's good I can laugh still at just how hilarious these stories can get. So, a man who used a Subway sandwich to attack a federal agent on the streets of D.C. earlier this week has been charged with felony assault. The criminal case against Sean Charles Dunn, 37, was announced Wednesday by D.C. U.S. Attorney Judge Jeanine Pirro, who said in a statement that the police are not out there to be pushed around or beat up. No, they're the ones that push around and beat up the community. That's how it's supposed to be. We beat up you. You don't beat up us. Oh my God. It's too funny. Dunn was allegedly captured on video Sunday night shouting that a group of federal officers were fascists before whipping his deli sandwich at them and striking a U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent in the chest. He thought it was funny. Well, he doesn't think it's funny today because we charged him with a felony assault on a police officer, Pirro said in a video posted on X. So there, stick your Subway sandwich somewhere else. It's such lunacy what's going on here. It's such lunacy that instead of actually having confident police officers who deal directly with the community, that actually act in accordance to stop the crimes, which could resolve all of this, they're taking this to extreme levels. And I've noticed this when it comes to ICE. I've noticed this when it comes to immigration, when it comes to crime. And the Trump administration heavily relies on crime and punishment as being their go-to to keep this administration afloat. It's all done intentionally to scare and fearmonger people so that the Trump administration can sell you the idea of fascism, this idea of having ICE agents storm into your communities, storm into your neighborhoods, walk down the streets. It's this idea of having a police state to make you feel safer. But in the hindsight, having this police state, having this authoritarian reach, doesn't actually make the community safer. It makes it so the federal government can jurisdiction over communities and over cities and towns and override their powers to decide how they want to police, how they want the police officers to react to crimes. They can then overpower that and serve the oligarchy. And that's what these National Guardsmen, that's what the ICE officials are especially doing when they're walking around, when they're trying to say, hey, we're cracking down on the illegals and migrants by storming into a Walmart and pulling out one of the employees. And then they walk on the beach with nothing around. It's all there to sell you the deep state. It's there to sell you when Palantir takes over and builds this AI database that this police state is benefiting you. And now they're using this sandwich attack, this probably drunk idiot at 3 a.m., just, being an asshole, which that's not a crime. That's not a crime to be an asshole, to be a jerk. And using that as an example to motivate people, to fear people, and bait them into this police state. So here, you get individuals like Kash Patel, the FBI director, saying the FBI arrested this individual last night. He has been charged with felony assault on a federal officer with a sandwich. Just keep that in mind, with a sandwich. And here is the evidence. Here's the video in question about this. And you tell me how offensive, how dangerous, and how much of a threat it is to an officer who's masked up, who's got riot gear on. He's equipped with a gun and possibly a taser. He has all this equipment. He has the ability to protect himself. But they make it sound like he's fearful of his life because of a guy with a sandwich. And it just seems so crazy. It seems such like a Benny Hill sketch. So you take this, watch this video. So there's the individual, there's the sandwich, and he runs away. Like, this seems like a stunt. This seems like a comedy bit. Yeah, probably drunk. Throws a sandwich. Runs away. This is apparently the master criminal that they're trying to track down. Here we go. Throw that sandwich. You just can't help but laugh. You just can't help but laugh at how crazy this is. These are people that are padded up to the nth degree. These are people that have all the munitions they can ask for. And they're fearful of a probably drunk guy with a sandwich. Oh my God, that bread could assault me. The assault with a deli weapon. Ooh. There's the movie poster for it. Wow. That's apparently what's freaking people out. And it's freaking even out the Attorney General. This is what Pam Bondi, instead of going after the Epstein files that she claims is on her desk that mysteriously vanished, that no one's allowed to question, that, hey, stop, why are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? I've talked about it enough. Why don't you give up? This is what she says about this. She says, if you touch any law enforcement, we will come after you. I just learned that this defendant worked at the Department of Justice. No longer. So this guy works at the DOJ. That's what the guy that threw the sandwich. They're claiming he worked at the DOJ. Says no longer. Not only is he fired, he's been charged with a felony. This is an example of the deep state. The guy throwing a sandwich. The guy throwing a sandwich from Subway is considered the deep state. From Pam Bondi, who's refusing to release the Epstein files to protect the deep state, and is releasing National Guardsmen to crack down on Washington, D.C. I didn't realize Subway was some sort of mysterious portal to a deep state sleeper cell. The cold cut conspiracy continues. I gotta tell you, we gotta write a screenplay for this. We could sell it to Lifetime. It could be like a Netflix documentary. The dangerous assaults with a sub. It's an example of the deep state that we have been up against for 7 months as they work to refocus the DOJ. Really, they're refocusing the DOJ, avoiding the Epstein scandal, which is one of the biggest scandals on the face of international crimes. You're talking about one of the largest, trafficking circles influenced by so many individuals, powerful figures that are on this list. You're protecting that and going after someone who threw a sandwich at a National Guardsman who has riot gear on and claiming that this guy, who probably is drunk, probably just went to Subway because he had the munchies, maybe high, who knows, threw a sandwich and ran away like a comedy bit. This is apparently a deviant criminal According to Pam Bondi, he's part of the deep state. She says, you will not work in this administration while disrespecting our government and law enforcement. A woman who is doing the disrespect to her constituents and the Trump base. The people that voted for Trump into office. You're doing a disrespect to them by not releasing the Epstein files, by completely ignoring the community and respect of their rights and abilities to govern how they want to govern, and overriding the authority of these towns by bringing in these National Guardsmen and ICE officials to crack down on your communities, thinking that's stopping crime, but it's actually making the crime worse. It's making the situation worse. All this is done intentionally to sell you the idea of a police state. That's why they're doing this. That's why they're rounding up migrants. That's why they're doing all this mayhem. Do they actually care about stopping mass migration? Probably not. Probably not. Why would I say that? Because at the same time, they want to announce more H-1B visas to bring people in to work in sectors. As they're trying to kick out migrants, there is farmland that is not being picked. So they're announcing AI technology to replace these workers. They're not bringing in Americans. They don't want to actually pay people a decent wage. Once the migrants go, everything's going to be automated. And who said that? Howard Lutnick said that. The Commerce Secretary of the Trump administration said that. Even the billionaires are openly admitting that they are transforming everything to automation. That this idea that we're going to tariff countries and we're going to kick out the migrants and America's going to go back to work. It's a fantasy because we know deep down the deep state, like Pam Bondi here and Kash Patel, are deliberately doing this to undermine you, to fear and bait you, to turn you into an AI surveilled police state. They work alongside with Palantir and Oracle. Larry Ellison already admitted that he's going to use his big donation from the Trump administration to turn law enforcement into an AI tracking system. So you don't actually deal with cops directly. You deal with robots. And you think robots are going to make you secure, make you feel safe? Do you think you have some communication between a robot and yourself? No, not really. It's going to be programmed by Palantir. It's going to be programmed by the deep state. But a guy throwing a sandwich, according to the Attorney General, is a monster of the deep state. This big monster. It looks like he just got out of a Jimmy Buffett concert, just looking at his clothing there. So, I like the responses. Here's Gen X Girl. Says, Epstein files don't exist, but man throwing a sandwich is the deep state. There's a lot of those. There's a lot of those going around. And here's Janine Pirro going on a ballistic rant that now this guy that threw a sandwich and ran away just as a dumb idiot, now they have to turn up the heat. Now they really have to crack down on people. Because there might be more sandwiches out there. Someone might throw a pizza or a bagel or a hot dog. We got to go after the people starting and engaging in a food fight. That's what Janine Pirro thinks. Listen.
The president's message to the criminals was, if you spit, we hit. Well, we didn't quite do that the other night when an individual went up to one of the federal law enforcement officers and started jumping up and down, screaming at him, berating him, yelling at him. And then he took a Subway sandwich about this big and took it and threw it at the officer. He thought it was funny. Well, he doesn't think it's funny today because we charged him with a felony, assault on a police officer. And we're going to back the police to the hilt. So there. Stick your Subway sandwich somewhere else.
There. Take your sandwich somewhere else. I am out of Chardonnay and Love Island isn't on. I am pissed. I am Janine Pirro. Again, you may think that that guy was a jerk for throwing the sandwich. I don't, support what he did there. I condone that he threw a sandwich. That's kind of a waste of food and just being a jerk. But again, can't convict a felony charge on someone being a jerk. You can't go to that same discretion and engage even further of an authoritarian reach for just some asshole who threw a sandwich. It just seems so bonkers. It's so bonkers when you look into this, when you actually take a moment, step back, and look at this in the context that they're saying this. It's absolute lunacy. But again, they're trying to do this to bait people, and they're trying to do it as quick as possible so you don't have the ability to think this through. They're trying to bait people to accept an authoritarian police state. And that's why they're pushing AI technology through the roof. And places like Palantir and Oracle, they're donating huge amounts of money to make a search and surveil state. And if you think that this is somehow cracking down on the worst of the worst and we're, decreasing crime and, oh, well, it's taking out the illegal migrants that are hoarding in on America. Okay. Let's say your argument is right. Maybe they are doing the right thing. What happens when the migrants do disappear? What happens when there's no more migrants to round up? Obviously, they're building these giant facilities for something. You got to house them with someone. So they're going to start going after poor people. They're going to start going after the homeless. Maybe they'll start going after people that question Israel. Maybe they'll start going after mothers who disagree with teaching their kids Christianity values. And maybe they'll start going after teachers that, preach about LGBTQ. And that's when it starts changing and shifting the goalpost. And next thing you know, they're going to crack down more and more and more and more on Americans. As the saying goes, first they go after them, and I didn't say anything, and then they go after me, and there's no one around. So this is a dangerous look. This is a dangerous look. And this doesn't actually combat the problem of crime. This doesn't actually combat the problem of what crime relates to. And a lot of crime derives from poverty, derives from measures taken in place that is making it economically infeasible for people to live. Hence why shoplifting is skyrocketing. Why people are stealing money and stealing, goods out of a store to sell in pawn shops because they can't make ends meet. And if you look at statistically, poverty has a direct coalition with skyrocketing crime numbers. You notice how crimes are mostly affected in impoverished areas. Southside Chicago, Detroit, Buffalo, the worst, Toronto. People that are in desperate need that commit these crimes. And I'm not saying that these crimes should be committed. I'm obviously condoning criminals. But if you really want to hammer out this problem, you have to look at this and you have to find some real solutions that actually decrease the crime, not just keep it going for the sake of the Trump administration and for the sake of ICE to maintain jobs, which that's all this is. They want to make crime such a havoc and continue and make it worse so that it makes ICE look good. So it makes that Homeland Security looks good. So it makes the police state look good and sell it to you. That's what all this is. And having Janine Pirro and Pam Bondi tell you it's a deep state conspiracy. This guy that's part of the deep state throwing a sandwich. Oh my God, so crazy. That's why we got to go in and we got to amplify it to an 11. Charge you with a felony for throwing food. And you think this gets even, if you think it gets less insane, take a look at the news report that came out. This is from a DC local station, WUSA. Watch how they covered this. You swear this is like a Benny Hill sketch. You think SNL wrote this bit up, but this is what they reported.
Accused of tossing a Subway sandwich at a federal officer was back in court today.
Yeah, 37-year-old Sean Dunn was released without having to post bail. And you might remember the whole thing was caught on camera and then posted to Instagram.
Prosecutors say they're now pushing for felony assault charges, which come with some serious time. We get the latest from Matt Gregory.
It's the seriousness of the charges leveled against Sean Dunn that makes the judge's decision so unusual. When you're talking about a felony assault charge in federal court that could put someone in prison up to 8 years, normally you wouldn't see a defendant get released, certainly not on their own recognizance. But Sean Dunn's attorney says this was a legal victory for him, and she has questions about how the arrest happened last night. Court documents and video show what prosecutors say happened Sunday night near 14th and U Street. They allege Dunn verbally confronted federal officers, then threw his Subway sandwich at one of them at close range.
In retrospect, he's going to say, hey, why did I do that? But at the time, mentally, he's like, hey, this is my city. Don't want you here.
Police arrested Dunn, and according to court records, he admitted, quote, I did it. I threw the sandwich.
It's tragic.
He appeared in D.C. Superior Court Monday, where a judge released him. But on Wednesday, federal prosecutors issued a new arrest warrant charging him with felony assault in federal court. Now, inside the courtroom, Dunn's attorney said he tried to turn himself in, but received no response from the DOJ. She claims 20 officers later came to his home to arrest him. The attorney also revealed Dunn served in the U.S. Air Force, which was a fact prosecutors didn't appear to know, and that he had been working for the DOJ until he was fired this week. Now, his attorney also argued that no one was injured and questioned whether this incident meets the standard for such a serious felony charge. The judge agreed to release Dunn pending his next court date, but it's a case that has sparked debate across the city.
That's too bad. You shouldn't do this. Yeah, no, you shouldn't do this.
No. So why do you think that?
Well, I mean, he's not supposed to do that. It's against the law officers.
So now Sean Dunn is due back in court on September 4th for his preliminary hearing in federal court. Outside of the federal courthouse in D.C., I'm Matt Gregory, WUSA 9.
So it just makes a joke of the whole thing. And obviously, because this guy is claimed to work for the Department of Justice, I feel that he's going to get off scot-free. I don't think they're going to actually charge him with 8 years of felony for throwing a freaking sandwich, a Subway sandwich at an officer. Thank God it wasn't Taco Bell or Chipotle. My God. Can you imagine if he threw it like a burrito at the National Guard? That calls for deportation. Thank God he threw white guy food. I don't know. Maybe they're arresting him because they put the wrong kind of mustard on the sandwich. I asked, if you want to be an American, you have to put on yellow mustard. I smell Dijon. That's foreign food. How dare you be unpatriotic? We don't have room for your gray poupon in the United States of America. I can't help but laugh at this. I can't help but laugh at this. That this whole thing, this whole just joke that a guy threw a sandwich who obviously, I condone for him throwing the sandwich. I think it was, rude to do that. But you're going to charge him with a felony, a federal felony for something as little as this when we know that there's actual legitimate white-collar criminals that you are protecting as Attorney General. The fact that you're covering up for the fans of the playground involved with Jeffrey Epstein. The fact that you're thinking of pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. The fact that you're covering up for the most heinous criminals of mankind that still walk the earth in America. And cracking down on some dumb idiot who threw a sandwich makes an entire mockery of law and order and justice and making cities safer in America. The fact that you're wasting huge amounts of money underfunding the essential services that makes a society function, to serve the needs of ICE, to just roam around from city to city and march around like some steaded army, like it's the Soviet Union or, you know, the Third Reich, is just crazy. It's crazy. And what they're not doing is actually looking at the crime statistics, looking at why crime is skyrocketing, and coming to actual resolutions that would decrease crime. You know, you notice how they don't freak out about criminals in Malibu. You notice how there's no ICE raids in Martha's Vineyard. I wonder why that is. I wonder why that is. Because they're wealthy, they're well off, that they don't need to steal, they don't need to crack down, they don't need to sell drugs, they don't need to traffic to make a quick buck so they can feed themselves or feed their families. Could that be the case? That's something to investigate. That's something to look into. Far greater than arresting a man who threw a sandwich. Just so unbelievable. It's so unbelievably, hysterically hilarious. And all this to protect the National Guards. They're just roaming DC for really nothing. It just seems like a waste of taxpayer money, a waste of time, and a waste of energy. When the National Guard can be deployed in Texas right now with the flood victims. They can be helping people in North Carolina that are still affected by the hurricane. They can be helping restore California that burnt to bits. They can help Maui that got burnt down. They could be doing so many things right now, but this is what they're doing in Washington. Watch. Look at this. Just a stroll down. Look at that. Hey, buddy, see the game last night?
Behind the planters! Sir, you too! Behind the planters!
Look at that, just walking down the catwalk. Hey, let's take a picture. Be like the Beatles. Wow.
I couldn't tell if you were joking.
Yeah, look at me. Look how tough I am with smart water. I better not see people with food. I swear, if I see another sandwich again, oh, I'm gonna go after you. Look at this. They're just touring around. Oh my God.
Let me show you something.
Look at this. This is wow. Now they're marching into a park. They got to storm and raid the park. Oh my God, the migrants that are playing on the playground equipment. All those children. Now storm in. Hard not to laugh at this. It's hard not to laugh. And how they're making this so serious when it's just an absolute joke. And I wanted to show this, just to add on. This is from the Black Tucker Carlson Jr. And he posted this video of a conversation he had with a police officer. And it says, Day 4, DC police don't want a conversation. So this guy, he's a resident in DC, and he's talking to the officer about possible solutions on how to de-escalate the crime problem. And he has some possibilities. The guy in the yellow. And the officer just doesn't care to listen to him. Watch.
Now, This is a good conversation, whether you want to believe it or not.
I didn't say it wasn't. I wouldn't be here talking
The
about it.
conversation that needs to happen between law enforcement and community, we need to be able to hear both sides.
Correct.
Now, your thing is, you saying there's no law there, right?
No, I didn't say no law.
Okay, well, no law there, but no
counsel.
standing in
Correct.
front of, there must have been some kind of complaints coming from the establishment.
Yeah,
The
multiple.
problem is that people live in this building, people live on this street, and they're used to this. Now, it looks different for law enforcement that's saying, oh, this is a high crime area and things in the nation.
I mean, that's true.
And okay, that could be true allegedly, right?
It's not allegedly. The little girl's view that's on the wall, that didn't come from
That-
allegedly.
that's true.
That came from a drive-by shooting that 5 people were
That
and I
did.
was here
That
saving
did.
her mother's life.
That did.
Unfortunately, the little girl didn't survive.
And we appreciate the
But see,
service.
y'all, you wouldn't know that.
I was there. I was there.
But you know
We
what?
appreciate
But
that.
this is the thing.
So you may not be hearing exactly what he's saying, but basically he's saying that there's a disconnect between the officers and the community that they're supposed to be protecting. And a lot of these officers come from outside whatever area that they're supposed to be patrolling, and they don't know what the community wants, and there's this disconnect. And what this guy is saying is that if we want trust back in the officers and you want respect from the community, then we need to engage a conversation with the officers, with law enforcement, and the community that you're supposed to be protecting. And that's always been the case. That's always been the case because your tax dollars pay for these officers. So you have every right as a taxpayer citizen that you're allowed to have a conversation with an officer on how you want to be policed, how you want to crack down on crime, how you want to deal with the situation. But this officer, a lot of other officers are in the same boat, refuse to have that conversation. And a lot of these officers get trained not even in America. A lot of the officers get trained in Israel. Did you know that? A lot of metropolitan police in America get sent to Israel to train over there. And we all know how Israel likes their law enforcement. We all know the training facilities that they have. So it makes you kind of wonder their mindset when they get trained outside of America, outside the communities that they're supposed to be protecting. They get indoctrinated by Israel, come back to America, and they act in a certain way similar to our greatest ally. Just to point that out. And he's making that point, that there's a huge disconnect that we should be rehabilitating. We should be bringing back the cops with the community. If you want to serve the people of Washington, D.C., then the people of Washington, D.C. have to have their voices spoken directly to the officers. But there's this just giant disconnect.
Conversation of you letting the people know that they respect you more. Because they offer so much, them knowing that now, they will respect you a lot more. Just because they never got
I was bragging that we were there for that.
No, not
Why would we
bragging.
go around?
No, we're not talking about bragging.
That's not our job.
But-
We don't have to tell them what we've done, whose lives we've saved, because that's our job.
Yeah.
It's a thankless job. We don't expect thanks
But
from
this is the thing,
everybody.
Officer Griffin. This is the thing, Officer Griffin. Let's say you lived in Largo. If something happened to your parent and I was the one doing CPR on that person, you would thank me and shake my hand.
Absolutely.
So what I'm
But I
saying
wouldn't
is,
expect you to walk around telling everybody that you say
I did, but what I'm saying is, there is a disconnection between community and law enforcement, and until we figure out how to get it together and have a conversation, it's going to be you chasing them and them saying fuck you and all that other stuff. We don't have to be there. We can get to a point where Officer Lingham, when I know you, and we say, hey, look, we got a complaint, we need y'all to move. And you can have this shit cleared out off respect. Not off running down. Not off running down. Griffin got a-
So, this I feel like this should be the conversation. Instead of what that guy did by throwing a sandwich and having National Guardsmen crack him down and try to arrest him on a felony charge for 8 years, this is what should have been happening. This is what should be happening. I applaud this. That he's having a direct conversation with two officers there and saying, this is how I feel about the law enforcement that's being done, that it's not protecting me, that it just seems like you guys have a complete disconnect from the community. we pay your salaries, we pay your dues, and you don't have the same obligation to serve our communities. And a lot of that is because the unions representing police officers are deeply corrupted. They're tied with the private prison industry. They're tied with, having this kind of police state on force. And they're also being trained outside the country. So there's a big disconnect with law enforcement and communities. And Pam Bondi and Kash Patel could recognize that and state that and address that and bring that to Trump's attention, and we can actually have a proper police form and have real justice being done, real serving and protecting of law if we actually acknowledge this. But instead, we go to far extremes. We either try to defund the police, which is just off the rails crazy, because you need police officers, same way you need firefighters and ambulance drivers. So defunding it is not the answer. And going to the extreme of authoritarianism, where you're cracking down on citizens as you're marching along the main streets, is also not the answer. Having Trump take over city after city is not the answer. It's not the solution to decreasing crime. The solution is to actually have a full conversation about solutions that we can actually come together on. But the Trump administration refuses to do that because they need this opportunity. They need a way to not only distract people from the Epstein files, this is the perfect on-set distraction, and bring back the base, but it's also a way to sell you the police state. It's a way to sell you what's coming ahead when it's AI, Palantir, a complete technocracy of a police state where they're going to track, surveil, monitor you, and if you step out of line, some robot's going to scan you, whatever the case may be, digital IDs. If you step out of line, you're in deep trouble. That crime goes to the federal government responding to this. That's in deep connection with the AI technology. And they might send you to Alligator Alcatraz or whatever concentration camp they build next. Because we know they're not building these large facilities specifically just for migrants. Because once they're gone, once they're deported, they got to have someone in there. They got to keep it running somehow. So just beware. Beware of this. And beware the insane lunacy that they're tricking you with to try to sell you the idea, to bait you using fear tactics into this police state.